Hello, everyone, and welcome to Turning Experiential Learning into Real-World Employability. This is a Times Higher Education webinar in partnership with Cialfo. My name is Alistair Lawrence. I'm the Head of Branded Content at THE, and I'll be chairing today's discussion. I'm delighted to be joined by a presidential panel of experts for today's discussion, who are Lejeune Terry-Cornish, President of Ithaca College, Kent Devereux, President of Goucher College, and Jeffrey R. Docking, who is President of Adrian College. There will be an opportunity to put questions to the panel during the final 5 or 10 minutes of the hour that we have scheduled today. So please feel free to write any questions in the box on Zoom, and we'll answer as many as possible before the end. As fears around an enrollment downturn continue to affect America's higher education sector, institutions must reiterate and promote the pathways into the workforce that they can offer. This can be particularly important for international students whose ambition to stay and work in the country where they're studying after they graduate plays a large part in the decision-making process of choosing where to study. Today's webinar discussion will share knowledge and best practice from experts to address the new set of strategic challenges which are emerging in response to a rapidly evolving higher education landscape. But before we begin, Felicia Siska, who is Vice President for University Engagement at Cialfo, will give us a brief overview about how Cialfo are working with the sector to address this.
Thank you, Alistair. And we here at Cialfo are happy to partner with Times Higher Education on this event as well. I'm excited to see you all, and thank you for joining us here today. And a special thanks to our distinguished panel. Thank you, President Cornish, Devereux, and Docking for joining us. And we're excited about today's discussion. As Alistair mentioned, my name is Felicia Siska. I am the Vice President of University Engagement here at Cialfo. Cialfo is a network where high school students, their counselors, and families have the ability to connect with higher education institutions worldwide to find their right fit college or university. And today we decided to bring together this panel from Adrian College, Goucher, and Ithaca because employability is something that we hear a lot about from our network of over 310,000 students across 1,600 the world's leading international high schools. And it's a topic that our students are both passionate and concerned about at the same time. In a survey that we recently conducted, we heard from our students that almost 39% of students from Asia Pac and 50% from Latin America actually choose to go overseas for an international higher education experience because of better employment opportunities than they have in their home country. And one of the top concerns was about job uncertainty in foreign countries after graduation. In fact, 49% showed us and told us that they were concerned about that. In addition to that, 46% of students were also worried that the pandemic would actually affect their career prospects, and they gave great consideration to that when they were selecting their institution of choice for higher learning. So given these numbers, we at Cialfo thought it was extremely valuable to discuss how transformative liberal arts models translates into opportunities within today's dynamic workforce. Especially as all of you as participants begin and embark upon your new recruitment season. And so with that, I'll turn things over to Alistair. I'll be here in the background, and I look forward to hearing today's discussion today. Thanks, Alistair.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Felicia. With that in mind, I'd like to kick off by asking the panel, how are career pathways and destinations changing for your students? We've already heard a little bit about some of the anxieties and issues that international students are weighing up when they apply to colleges such as yours. Have you noticed a change in the dialogue that you're having with students around them making these choices?
Happy to begin, and thank you. Happy to be a part of this panel, and it's an honor to be here with my colleagues. One of the biggest changes and challenges we face is preparing students for fields that don't exist. And so that's a really great challenge. Students today, along with their parents, want to have a clear understanding of the value of an education, of a college education in particular, and they are concerned about relevance. How is this going to be relevant when I leave the college? And so trying to help students understand that is one of the challenges that we face. The ability to put theory into practice also helps prepare students for the world of work, but it also helps them stand out when they enter the world of work. I'm going to stop here and let my colleagues chime in.
President Docking, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I really agree exactly with what President Cornish just said. I would simply put it differently. What we're hearing much more from admissions counselors and even coaches that bring students to campus is they're hearing many more questions about return on investment. And will my tuition, room and board ultimately lead to a good job? Not 5 years after graduation, but literally right after graduation, because with what students are taking on with debt and how expensive college has become, and many parents saying, we just can't do any more than this. They want to know that they're going to be able to pay that off. And so jobs is really what we keep saying. And that has been quite a change over the last few years.
Yeah, I would agree with my colleagues that career advancement, career opportunities has been much greater focus, especially in the last 5 years, which is interesting in the United States for our domestic students that with unemployment at a 40-year low, quite frankly, that most college graduates today have a better opportunity or entering a better job market than in a generation or two. But interestingly enough, I think the nature of the conversation has changed on campuses. We really look at it as an ethical obligation. And this is very much true of the faculty we hire today. They understand that really how we launch our students over the first 5 years after they graduate is very much part of our promise. We rank very high, I think number 51 out of 1,500 colleges, private, nonprofit colleges in America, in terms of return on investment and our ability to be able to kind of move people up in terms of social mobility. But we're also hearing it from our international students that what their career opportunities are going to be going forward is especially important, if not the most important thing. So we're really trying to address it in 3 ways. Do we have the right programs? Introducing new majors that are really, as President Cornish mentioned, in emerging fields, where things are going into the future. Secondly, do we have the internships set up? And we've rolled out this last year what we call the Internship Accelerator, where we have structured internships over all 4 years, starting with just almost baby, we call them micro internships, starting in year 1, all the way through, to understand that some people aren't quite sure what the field they're going to go into, and that's okay. A college is an opportunity to try those things, perhaps fail, but fail in a safe way. And then finally, what's really important to us, and I think is very popular with international students, has been us now working with other universities for 4+1 programs with OPT qualifications. So we can partner with a Johns Hopkins University or an NYU or a Loyola or a other institution where it allows us to basically graduate those students and then be automatically accepted into a graduate program. And then from there have the OPT work permit opportunities here in the States. So there's really 3 ways: programs, internships, and linkages are really kind of important as we're trying to address this new front and center need, and recognizing it's our ethical obligation to do that, not just educate students, but really launch them onto a successful career, however they define it.
And how do you take some of the anxiety and pressure out of something like the structured internships that you mentioned? Because as you say, you don't necessarily want people to feel like the internship they're doing in the first year of a 4-year degree is something that they're then obligated to study and work in that field.
I think it's the same way that we try to kind of promote all of our opportunities here, is that college is the time in your life where we want you to stretch and we want you to fail, but fail safely. So there's not a lot of face saving that needs to go on. If something is tried in the first year to shadow somebody for 3 weeks and say, that's not the field for me. Somebody who wants to go to healthcare and go, no, too much blood, not for me. Somebody who wants to be a lawyer and realizes, it's not like they show on the courtroom dramas on TV. It's a lot of paperwork. That's not for me. We want people to find that out earlier and try. And if they say, no, not for me, that's okay. We can try multiple things. And we really try to promote people to really stretch themselves. Now, college is an opportunity for them to stretch themselves, to question their basic assumptions, to make sure so by the time they graduate from here, that that's the field that they want to go into.
Okay. President Cornish, do you see the value in an approach like that, where you're perhaps saying to somebody, yes, this is to inform your career choices, but it's not to necessarily funnel you into the field that you think you want to do when you're 18?
As someone who changed her major 4 times over the course of her undergraduate career, I always tell students that what you think you want to do walking in the door may not be what you do once you leave, or even end up being the career that you thought you would have. Another thing we try to do is develop a sense of belonging in our students. So in addition to those internship opportunities, we also like to connect our students with our alumni as soon as possible, because alumni can provide mentorship to our students and expertise as well, and to remind them of what it was like when they were, just starting out in the early years. And so connecting our alumni to our students, encouraging our alumni to provide mentorship to our students is another thing that we try to do. And also reminding students that how you start doesn't determine how you will finish. And so don't worry about having a major and knowing what it is for sure walking in the door.
Okay. President Docking, is there a similar ethos in place at your institution?
There is. We term it a little bit different. We call them externships, which is more of a quick hit, because I do agree with President Devereaux that sometimes, the internship that lasts an entire semester, even an entire year, can be more than the student wants to get into. And so we often encourage students to do just a 1 or 2 day, even a 3-day externship, where they can get exposure to a field, they can network, they can meet more people. We'll give kids a day off from classes if they think they want to be an anesthesiologist and they're in a pre-med program. We'll spend a day with an anesthesiologist and see if that's the right thing for you. Related to that, every time they do an externship or a longer internship, they're making connections, and networking, especially for international students, that we have found is incredibly important. Obviously they're coming from overseas. They don't know presumably as many people as the domestic students would. And so for them to get over here, to be meeting a lot of people, talking to people in their field or their potential field, is probably even more critical for international students than domestic students. So we spend a lot of time trying to connect students to real people doing real jobs that they might be interested in, so that in 4 years, if they decide this is for me, they can get a phone call from that student that did an externship with them or an internship and say, hey, do you remember me? I'd love to work with you or for you. So all of that is even more important for the internationals.
And can that expedite something like overcoming cultural barriers with international students? I'm just thinking, when I've interviewed higher education leaders in the past, one of the points they've made is that international students from areas such as China or the Middle East or perhaps South Asia coming into a Westernized education system, there's a lot that seems strange or unfamiliar to them, partly being in a different country, also the way in which you interact with your teachers and your elders at university, and also perhaps in some cultures the shift from rote learning to more of a dialogue, and a greater emphasis being placed on critical thinking. Presumably those challenges are also magnified when you're entering the workplace. If you have a very different experience of what the working world is like in your own country, and then you're coming to another one and you're expected to learn and pick up a lot from there. So do you think this can be something that can overall, it can help people integrate and acclimatize in a way that will speed up their understanding and their intuition when they are carrying out the later stages of their career and later stages of their studies, and deciding, okay, well, perhaps that internship wasn't for me, but I'm making a more informed choice now about where I would like to go next?
I say 100% that's accurate. Just even beyond language skills and what's the vernacular of this field that I want to get into, and what are the nuances and the cultural norms that I need to be aware of. All of that is so important to international students. The other thing which we've really tried to weave into our internships and obviously into our classes as well is a true capstone experience in which they are doing something at the end of the semester that truly can be walked into that first interview with an employer, whether these are an international student or a domestic student, to say, I have done something. And we've started many high-tech majors here: cybersecurity, web design, data analytics, game development, even computer science. And so they're not saying, hey, I learned computer science out of a book, but I did this project, which seems relevant, excuse me, to this corporation or field, and I can come in with some pretty good ideas about what I can do to help. So all of that emerges from internships, and we think it's very, very worthwhile.
Presidents Cornish and Devereaux, have you found yourself making any additional adjustments for international cohorts who are perhaps returning in larger numbers now post-pandemic and have done some or most of their learning online in the interim period?
Well, we've made a move on campus to bring our international students closer to the administrative building and administration building, if you will. And so our building has always been seen as, oh, the administrators, you don't want to go in there. So we wanted to make it more student friendly. And so we've taken the garden level of our administration building, and it is our Office of International Studies is on this floor, trying to create a sense of belonging for our international students, surrounding them with the people who work here, allowing them to see the different types of jobs that one can hold in a college, and giving them opportunities to have internships even within our administrative offices. And so, during the pandemic, many of our international students stayed on Ithaca College's campus because they couldn't get home. So this became a home for them. And that helped them acclimate even more and to welcome new students as they have come to our campus because they've spent so much time here due to the inability to travel. And so they've created a community to welcome more international students as we bring them on board.
Okay. President Devereaux, is that perhaps one of the paradoxes about the pandemic, in that while it stopped so much travel, it built stronger communities in locuses like college campuses?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just kind of chuckling as I hear, President Cornish's description, because yeah, some of the same things happened here. The experience of our international students was really varied by the country of origin. So we had a number of students, I think 22 students here, who didn't go home for 2.5 years. This was their home. And we basically said, don't worry, summertime, we're not going to charge you for room and board. You really have no choice. You're stuck here. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that, you at least feel welcome here. Had receptions over at the president's house on campus, just, had a barbecue, just anything that we could do just to kind of make people have that strong connection. Meanwhile, we had students who could not get into the country and continued studying from Cameroon or France or, Japan entirely. And so the first time that they're on campus now as seniors is this year. So it's a very different experience. There's no one experience, but it definitely has strengthened the bonds for those who have had that connection with college. And so we've had to adapt in very different ways. And I think that diversity is great, because I think as we apply it to our domestic students as well, not everybody has the same experience. So many of the things we talked about, the cultural cues, it's not the knowledge, it's how you actually kind of figure out how do you network, where are you going to go next. That's why we want those kind of things to happen when somebody here is a first-year student or a second-year student. We're really focusing on the skills that all students need, domestic as well as international, to be successful in their careers, and not just assume because that's a domestic student who happens to be, from 25 miles away, that they're going to know that. No, they might not pick up the same cultural cues that are necessary in a scientific field or in the law or in medicine or in social work. So it's really helping them understand what are the norms in that field. Are you going to be successful in this field? Can you see yourself making a life in this field? Is that a good fit for you? Because with a college education, especially a broad liberal arts college education, there's a lot of doors open to you. So don't feel like you're only have one door and you've got to fit yourself into that door. Figure out what is the right fit for you in society.
By spending more time in place with your international students under what were admittedly unusual and exceptional circumstances, was there anything surprising that you learned in terms of their perceptions of their studies at your college, or their hopes and their expectations of their employability afterwards?
No, I think in our case, it was just reinforced. They were extremely grateful to have a home in an extremely stressful and uncertain times. So I think I think that one of our students was the valedictorian because she was here all straight through and she worked hard and just an exceptional student. So we actually saw those students really kind of, rise to the occasion and actually become a model for some of our domestic students.
Great. President Docking, you mentioned earlier about how you are adding new majors and looking to obviously move with the demand in the employment market and prepare students for the world of employment as much as possible. As other universities that move to a more interdisciplinary model, do you feel like you've had a kind of head start there, really, where you anticipated the fact that, yes, you're not just a subject knowledge of one single area is not perhaps going to be enough or not just give you the range of options that you might need? And I also wondered, is there a set of skills, critical skills, that could be transferred into workplace skills that you think you can teach more easily through interdisciplinary education, the type of which you get at a liberal arts college?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, we have actually started 17 new majors just over the last 2 years. And the way we've been able to do this is we've worked in collaboration with about 135 other colleges called the Lower Cost Models Consortium, which allows us to share some classes and to do some things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And this is all provided for in a platform we started here called RISE. The reason I bring this up is when we started these majors, the first thing that we did after we got the curriculum together is we went out to industry and we said, is this what you're looking for? Is this what students need to know? So for example, when we did the computer science curriculum, we took it out to Google, literally to Mountain View in California, and said, is this what you want? And they said, well, it's mostly what we want. We wish you'd change this a little bit and that a little bit, which we did. And we said, would you be willing to look at this curriculum at least once a year, because we know the world is changing so fast, so that we know that these students are getting exactly what Google wants. But we're not asking you to guarantee these students a job once they graduate, but would you at least give them an extra look because they're accomplishing and excelling in the curriculum that you helped design? And so we did that across the board. We did it in supply chain management. We did it in healthcare fields. We talked to the World Health Organization. We talked to Domino's. We talked to L Brands. So we do this with all of these new majors to make that corporate connection. But the second part of your question was about sort of, if I can just call it soft skills. And what was interesting about the Google meetings is that they said, look, we want the computer science students have to know how to do things the first day of work that they can only learn in a deep dive in class. But we also want the liberal arts, and we want students that can work together in a team, that understand fortitude and stick-to-itiveness and all of the things that we know lead to lifelong learning, the ability to change quickly and be nimble. And so it truly is sort of the Goldilocks between, a deep dive in a particular field, be it technology or healthcare or business or whatever, but also balancing that with what I think we should be so proud of in this country, which is a true foundation in the liberal arts.
And does it help build trust with your student bodies, for them to know that you're having those kind of in-depth conversations with people who are industry leaders?
It does, and it especially helps when families and students are looking at colleges to go to, because as we started out a few minutes ago talking about, they are worried about return on investment, and they've heard from friends that, oh, I got this job, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And corporations are saying I had to train this person for 2 years before they could really make a difference and help us out. And so, yeah, we feel like that corporate connection, that professional skills management right from the start. And we go back to all of these, corporations and professions once a year to update the curriculum, just like we did with Google, to help students know you are learning what the marketplace needs.
And the flip side of that we hear very often when we interview senior leaders at Times Higher is that that's absolutely fantastic, but what about the staff? And are you taking them with you on this journey? And are you making sure that they are being supported to perhaps teach students in a slightly different way and manage changing expectations of the student body?
We do. When I went out there, I went with my provost. I took a faculty member with me. And so this was a very collaborative effort with faculty and staff, meeting with the corporations. And because it's an ongoing relationship, we basically put together a group in each of these new majors where faculty, corporate connections, administrators sit down as a group, look at the curriculum together and have buy-in, because we know that if we change the curriculum, update it, but it's not getting taught in the classroom, it's not any good anyway. So yes, it's very, very collaborative. And if anyone knows faculty members, you can't voice this upon them anyway. They want to know and believe in what they're teaching.
I'll retain my, sorry, go ahead, President Cornish.
I would add that the faculty own the curriculum. So let us remember that.
That's right.
And so they need to be collaborative partners in the process. The beauty of a liberal arts and sciences education is that it teaches students how to think analytically, creatively, critically. Employers want students who can problem solve. They want students who have, or employees who have quantitative and analytical skills. They want employees who know how to work with other people across difference. And if you look at the career competencies put out by the National Association of Colleges and Employers, you will see those 8 competencies. And you don't need to be in a major to get those competencies. You can get them across majors. So part of our jobs is to make sure that we are equipping students, as President Docking said, with those soft skills, in addition to the ability to negotiate, the ability to change their mind, the ability to fail, as President Devereaux said earlier, and to know that it's okay to fail forward. But these soft skills can be gained through the liberal arts and sciences, which prepare students, again, to think critically, analytically, and creatively.
Is it still, sorry, I was going to ask one more question from President Cornish. Is it still a cultural barrier to overcome in some cases where you may have an international student who's coming to our institution, who is the one person from their family who is going to university for the first time, and may have had a lot of financial support from not just their immediate family, but their extended family, and is coming to the US in particular because of, as our colleagues in Cialfo said earlier, the employment prospects and the other attractive things about coming to study in the United States. Do you have to work a little bit harder to communicate that message that it is okay to fail and it is okay to try things and it's okay to satisfy your curiosity about something and decide it's not what you wanted and you can change your mind? Is that something you have to maybe push, not push, but communicate a little more often to international students?
Absolutely, because the fear of failure sometimes is greater because they feel like so much is riding on that. And so we make sure that they are connected to mentors, again, and to colleagues and peers on staff who will help them understand that you can fail forward and you can be successful. As not now doesn't mean not ever, it just means not now. And you can continue to learn through the failure. And I have to say that some of our first generation domestic students often feel that same way.
Okay, thank you very much. President Devereaux.
I very much agree with both what my colleagues have said, because I think it is oftentimes surprising when we have these conversations with corporate employers. So several years ago, prior to the pandemic, we were looking at interactive arts major that we've now introduced, and I was looking at previously at some things in terms of some design and some interactive arts components. So I reached out through a friend to the head recruiters at Lucasfilm, DreamWorks, and Disney Pixar to find out what they were looking for. And I was surprised by the answer. All 3 of them said what they were looking for was the ability to tell stories and an understanding of history. They said, we've got a lot of people who can draw, great. We've got a lot of people with computer skills, that's great. But when a director's in the room and mentions something which has a historical reference, and they look around the room and they realize nobody has any clue what happened in history, that's a problem. They can't tell the rich, deep stories that they need to tell. And it was so amazing because it was all 3 major studios told me that answer. And to me, it said, that's a liberal arts education. That's that broad foundational education. And, to second what President Cornish said, the other thing we heard repeatedly was that ability to work with others, the ability to collaborate with people different than yourselves in a diverse teams and be able to communicate and collaborate. That was really at the top of their list. And it was like, to get in the door, they got to draw. They actually have to have the skills or the computer skills that need a door, but that's not going to get them the job that they want. It's those other soft skills, but also knowledge-based skills that really they need, which comes from a broad liberal arts education.
How do you see the changing tides in higher education overall affecting liberal arts colleges? Because as more universities start to promote interdisciplinary education, is it going to mean working harder to promote your unique strengths to a potential student cohort, or do you feel like the bedrock of your ethos and how you educate students will endure?
I would just say for us, we have to work harder to differentiate ourselves. Higher education has been historically very poor at differentiating one college from another. That my experience, if I attend Goucher College, is very different than I attend the University of Michigan. They're fundamentally very, very different. And they're both excellent schools, but they deliver a different type of education. And so I think we've got to work harder to really differentiate what are the unique strengths of each school and what are the foundational elements that don't change over time. And so for us, we've got to work harder to differentiate ourselves. And for us, we have a unique identity in the United States as being one of the few colleges that has committed to sending 100% of our students overseas. So having a global connection in every single student, doesn't matter whether you're majoring in chemistry or dance or political science or environmental studies, you are going to spend some time in one of 50 countries around the world. And as we bring international students to our campus, we want that richness that they bring to our campus to really inform everyone's experience, no matter what path they take in life, because we just feel at this point, the global pandemic has proved it more than anything else, that we are bound together inextricably. The internet proved that, supply chain issues have proven that, the pandemic has proved it, and probably the greatest threat that we face today, global warming, is proving that if we don't all figure out how to work together and solve these problems, we are in for a whole lot of pain.
Okay, thank you very much. President Cornish, docking, are these conversations that you're having about needing to present yourself slightly different to students in order to promote what you do well or what you do differently?
I would say that we're trying to double down on what we do and who we are. And so Ithaca College is a comprehensive college rooted and grounded in the liberal arts and sciences tradition with amazing professional schools. So we have 4 professional schools, and all of our students get this grounding in the liberal arts and sciences. And the change that I see is that, students don't live in a disciplinary world anymore. Students come to us, they are transdisciplinary walking in the door. And so they are expecting us to be interdisciplinary in our offerings. We have an entertainment MBA program here. And what we find is students in music, theater, and dance may also minor in business. And I always say to them, you can learn how to make your passion your business. So take advantage of all that we offer and get out of the disciplinary box. But there's also something to be said for professional education when combined with liberal arts and sciences. And so that's what we do. And we want to, educate, engage, and empower through theory, practice, and performance.
Thank you. President Docking.
If I could jump on that, because I really think you're exactly right, President Cornish. Making your passion your business is really what it's all about between the ages of 18 and 22. And, we believe what distinguishes us is not us, meaning Adrian College, but all 3 of the colleges right now on the line, is that when you come to this type of college, you're not in a room of 500-600 students. You are in a room, a large class, I'm sure of all of our campuses would be 30 students. Most are probably closer to 20. And so when you can surround these international students and domestic students with people that care about them, with people that have a relationship with them, with people that can see the light bulb go off and go, hey, you seem to really love geology, or you seem to really love chemistry, or you seem to really love, English. Let's talk about whether a career in those fields would really get you out of bed in the morning and have you feeling like, as the old cliche goes, you're not going to work a day in your life. And size matters a lot with that type of experience. So President Devereaux had mentioned the University of Michigan, which is just 35 miles up the road from us. And so we do get kids coming and saying, I'm looking at Adrian, I'm looking at University of Michigan, and we feel like great because it is apples and oranges. If you want to have a footprint and be something more than a number, with all due respect to my friends up at the U of M, then this is a great place for you. And I should also mention that if you want a letter of recommendation at the end of 4 years, you can step into the president's office at our schools and get right in and get a letter of recommendation. And it's tough to do that with schools of 30, 40, 50,000 students. And the last thing that I'll say about these types of schools that I think distinguish them, which I think is very attractive to a lot of international families, is that they are small and they're at least perceived to be, and I think they are safe. And many are in communities that are not high in crime. And so families feel like, okay, I can send my kid there and feel comfortable. Several have a religious base. So if having a sort of a Christian ethos or a Jewish ethos or a religious ethos is important to that family, they can often do that here as well. So this is a particular type of education. Only about 15% of high school graduates that go to college choose a small private liberal arts college. And yet those that do, I think, realize this is right for me.
It's an interesting point you make about communities, because while we've spoken a lot about employment today, universities aren't job factories, and it's as much about, you said, the networking and the people that you meet, and that giving you an insight into what the world is like and what diversity is out there and what diversity of options is out there. And it is very interesting working for an outlet like Times Higher, because so much is now these big, sort of perhaps juggernaut universities trying to decide, how can we be more nimble? How can we be more agile? How can we serve the English literature graduate who wants to take some minors or some micro credentials in computer science so that they can satisfy that curiosity, or they can understand that world a little bit, or somebody who might be passionate about being artistic and creative, but also wants to have the entrepreneurial skills that they will need in order to turn their passion into a business. And from what you're all describing, it seems to me that is so baked into your ethos of that intermingling and that asking questions and querying these things, and perhaps walking away from things if they're just not what you wanted, or you realize that they're not a good fit for you, that you are set up in a position of strength, as even though so much of what is being taught can be moved to online and with great advantages in some cases, you cannot sacrifice being in the room and meeting those different people and being part of a community.
Well, that's right. I'm sorry, President Corn. Very briefly, I just want to say it's sort of a Norman Rockwell painting at these types of schools, in my opinion. You really are surrounded by a community of scholars and people that care about you. And it is late nights in the library and going to Saturday football games and personal high touch education, as we say, that it's just impossible to get at the larger schools. But President Cornish, I cut you off. I apologize.
No worries. There's something to be said about location and size. And so, we have about 5,000 students, but we are in, the quintessential college town. We share Ithaca with Cornell University, which is an R1 university, and TC3, Tompkins Cortland Community College, which is a wonderful community college. And then the relationships between the colleges. We have a relationship with Cornell. Our students can go there to take 2 courses a year. We have a relationship with TC3, our community college. We are forming articulation agreements with them so that their students can come here and then even go from TC3 to Ithaca to Cornell. We are providing pathways, and being in a college town affords, international students an opportunity to see the 3 types of institutions working together to meet their needs, but also to service the needs of our community as well. We like to say we are a private college serving the public good, and we do that in partnership with Cornell and with TC3.
Your point about community colleges is particularly interesting, especially for a foreigner such as myself, who's come from a slightly different university experience. But it's when the general anxiety about admissions sort of seems to grip the sector as a whole in America, and the general anxiety about employability is what perhaps catches the headlines. Maybe it's amplified by the headlines, but it is a conversation people are having. Does a partnership with a community college help you fulfill your remit and reach your goals for diversifying your intake, offering people perhaps a less daunting pathway into a college where they might look at it and say, oh, someone like me doesn't go to a college like that,
It does. And, you know, there's the cost factor too. Let's be honest about that. And so sometimes starting out at a community college is more affordable for students and families. And so they may spend their first 2 years at a community college, then matriculate to a 4-year institution. And so having articulation agreements with 4-year institutions to make the pathway, the transition from community college to a 4-year school easier. Students know walking in the door, if I take these set courses during my 2 years here, then I can transfer to a 4-year and graduate in an additional 2 years because I will have done the prerequisites during my community college years that will enable me to get out in 4 years with a degree. And so creating those pathways for students and making those pathways visible for students is also an opportunity for us because we don't always make those pathways as visible. But I know Maryland does something that makes things visible. So President Devereaux, I'm going to turn to you there.
Yeah, you know, I think we are very, very fortunate to be in a state, a very small state, with about a dozen private colleges, a dozen large public universities, and about a dozen community colleges, all within an hour of each other. So it is a tremendously rich higher education environment. And so we're actually seeing from community colleges into public universities a very rich pathway there. Where we're partnering is actually as an undergraduate primarily focused institution with our graduate institution partners. And that's both with publics and privates. So what's been extremely attractive to our international students has been 4+1 partnerships that you can come here, major in anything, and declare in your junior year that you want to then participate in a 4+1, take a couple graduate level classes in your senior year, and then go on for one more year. You end up getting your MBA from Loyola University, or your master's in business from Johns Hopkins, or your MPH in public health from Johns Hopkins, you know, top-rated public health, global health program in the world. So that attractiveness of partnering with larger research institutions to go on and get your graduate work, save an entire year of tuition money, and get into the workforce faster. That's where we're seeing a lot of attractiveness. As we start to get out there and talk about this, that's where international students really are seeing the value in what we're doing. And we're staying in our lane. Like my colleagues have said, as a small liberal arts college, our average, you know, student teacher ratio is 11-1. Largest class on campus is, I think, 43, I saw the other day. Average class size, you know, 16. You're not going to get that at a large university. There's no way. I go back and think about, as an undergraduate myself, I went to the University of California years ago, and I was so thrilled to sign up for a biology class with a Nobel Prize winner. With 400 of my other classmates, I don't think I ever even had a one-on-one conversation with that professor. And that's the experience at much larger universities. But at a small college, you get to know the faculty very well. They become your supporters, your biggest advocates. As was mentioned earlier, they're the ones who will then actually write a letter of recommendation for you. They will make the contacts for you. That's that kind of strong relationship that's true at small private colleges.
Okay, great, thank you. President Docking, is your institution's relationship with community colleges changing or evolving in any way?
It is changing to the extent that it's becoming closer, and we're spending more time on articulation agreements. You know, the big disappointment that students have is they go to a community college without really figuring out whether the classes that they're taking are going to transfer. And so they think they're coming with 2 years worth of credits, and they sort of show up in the registrar's office the first day when they transfer to a 4-year, and they realize, whoa, you know, many of these aren't going to transfer. And so it's sort of an opportunity lost. And so we have spent a lot of time making sure that students, especially international students, know exactly what will transfer, what won't, and to provide a pathway, as President Cornish said, that perhaps can be less expensive. We're very much a first generation school here, to the extent that 35% first generation. And so our students are not wealthy generally. They come out of the car factories around Detroit, many of them, and the supply chain management businesses around here. And they count every nickel, and they need to know if they're going to go to a community college that it's going to pay off. So yes to your answer, but it really needs to be an integrated approach from before they start classes at the community college. That's the key. Don't wait until you want to go to the 4-year. Figure out what's going to transfer at the front end.
Okay, thank you. We touched on alumni engagement earlier on in the hour. I just wondered if if anyone had any examples of particular successes that they've had. Has it been through, as somebody mentioned, engaging more with international alumni in order to give your current international students an idea of pathways and acclimatizing to a different country, a different way of teaching and a different culture? Or is the alumni program very much staying in place as it was pre-pandemic?
Well, college presidents spend a lot of time fundraising. In fact, I would bet that the majority of our time is spent fundraising. But I've added a question to my fundraising trips when I meet with alumni, which is essentially, what is your profession, and are you willing to help a student who may want to get into your profession? When I mean help, I'm not only talking about them hiring, but the relationships, the personal family type atmosphere that's established in these types of schools is one that if a kid is interested in going into project management in Phoenix, you can call an alum down there and say, hey, this person needs a place to stay for a week as they look for an apartment. And I've never heard the word no when I said, are you willing to help a student? Now, I've heard no many times when I've asked them for money, especially lots of money. But I haven't heard them say no when I said, are you willing to help a young person who's just starting out? And so that whole alumni connection has become a very, very important piece of, I think, what all of us do here. And it really is yet another, as President Devereaux said, sort of advantage that small colleges have. It's just so tough at the huge universities to have that kind of relationship. But we can really plug and play with a lot of students getting out. And that mentoring, that sort of inroad, also sells our schools to students when they're looking at the comparative advantages of the big publics versus the private schools like us.
Yeah, I would agree with everything President Docking said. We have seen one of the big advantages coming out of the pandemic, the ease of use of the video-based platforms like Zoom, and for our ability to reach out and say, hey, we've got a student who's interested in your field. Would you be willing to mentor them? Would you be willing to maybe to have them shadow you for a micro internship? Do this, and I would agree. I don't remember any alums we've asked ever saying no. Well, I'm by that. They may say no to the big ask for money, but they almost will never refuse an offer to help a fellow student and get them launched. And it's really been just absolutely invaluable. And that is one of the big, wonderful takeaways out of the awful pandemic that we've kind of gone through, is really changed our whole orientation towards working with our alums.
Indeed, and some of our alums, some of our most famous ones. I had a call with Bob Iger earlier this week, who is an alum of Ithaca College, and I met Ed Glazer, Tampa Bay Buccaneers owner, when I was in California earlier this year, and so David Muir, ABC World News Tonight, all Ithaca College alums. And so wanting to engage with our students, and Zoom has been our friend, which allows them to come into spaces with our students. But we also have this wonderful thing called Meet the Firms in New York for our School of Business, where our professors actually take our students to New York City to meet with people in the various firms there and meet with folks who are Ithaca College alums. So our students see what success looks like firsthand. And so we're really excited about programs and the fact that our alumni want to engage with our students in those ways.
Great, thank you very much. We've got about 10 minutes left. I'm mindful we've got a couple of questions from the audience that we'll get to shortly. Thank you to everyone who's joining us today in the audience. If you do have any questions for the presidents, please just pop them in the channel on Zoom, and we'll try and get through as many as possible before the end. I had one final topic that I'd like to cover briefly, which is to do with lifelong learning. And so much of what you said, you've spoken about already, it does resonate with that continued engagement and that building learning communities, and learning communities that transcend just the structure of being at college, or perhaps just the structure of being at the workplace. Do you think this is something that will only get stronger or more important for colleges such as yours when you look to the future?
I certainly do. We call it trying to make students robot proof. You know, if you can't be nimble, if you can't change, if you can't understand where the world is going and look around the corner, you're really going to be in a lot of trouble. You know, a few summers ago, I spent the summer in the United Arab Emirates, and they were interested in having a group of presidents over to learn about American higher education. And what I learned on that trip is just the liberal arts, the lifelong learning, the emphasis on creativity is something that was very, very new to them. And they were very pre-professional, very rote learning in many respects in their majors and minors in academic programs. And when we started to try to help them understand that the broadening of the mind, and as President Cornish was talking about earlier, the cross-disciplinary learning that needs to take place to get ready for life. I mean, life is cross-disciplinary. None of us live in a pre-professional world from sun up to sundown. And so this is only something that's going to get more and more important, why I think many of us are, you know, liberal artsaholics, as we say here. It's absolutely imperative that we don't give up on the liberal arts to simply be job focused.
And Alistair, here's where our career services can play a role. You know, the pandemic saw people lose jobs, resign from jobs, and need to acquire new skills. And so our career services here at Ithaca are not only for students during their 4 years, but we promise that those services will be available to you throughout the rest of your life. And so what we have found is that our alumni have come back to learn new skills and to engage with our career services department because new skills are needed for the world in which we find ourselves today. And so again, being a lifelong learner where you have academic excellence at the core of what you do, but also learning how to think critically, creatively, and analytically allows you to adapt and change and be nimble when times change, as we are living in those times right now.
Yeah, Alistair, I think it's changing all of our institutions. I mean, we're moving away from the kind of one and done approach to education in America to really being one where, if I look at our graduate programs today, we have about 850 students in our graduate programs. The average age of those students is 10 years older than our undergraduate population. It's not students who came right out of undergrad, went into a graduate school. No, these are students who went on into the workplace and then are coming back and maybe doing a career change or upskilling in different ways. And as we look forward, as America ages, we're actually initiating conversations with a continuous care community in terms of lifelong learning and developing a university-based retirement community. Because people change jobs, they retire, but they don't want to be retired and, you know, locked away in a box. They actually want to have active intellectual lives. They want to pick up new skills. They want to do different things. So I think it's changing. We have to be really adaptive as higher education institutions to adapt to how society is changing. And one of those ways is people are living longer. They're working in multiple different careers. They're having encore careers. So those are much larger questions that we're going to have to answer over the next 20 years.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, we'll go to the questions from the audience in the time that we have left. One of them is a question about funding OPT job offers for international students and the ways in which you've done that. Is this something that is becoming harder or easier in the digital age with digital tools that you have available?
It's becoming easier for us purely because we're actually partnering with institutions, and we've introduced a number of STEM majors that are actually qualifying for under the OPT program. And that's stretching the boundaries of the liberal arts college traditionally, but we have always been strong in the sciences. We were one of the very first colleges in America to actually offer science classes for women way back in 1880s. So it's not something that's new to us. It's just something that we're actually pushing to the forefront. And we're trying to find those areas where that kind of Venn diagram, where the liberal arts ethos and STEM overlaps, like bioethics or the ethical issues involved in artificial intelligence. These are issues that we're all going to have to confront. And it's not just all technology or all science. It's really that broad understanding that we want to bring to it. That interdisciplinary focus, as President Cornish mentioned.
Okay. Another question from the audience is asking about who are the staff who support the experiential learning programs at your institutions? President Cornish, should I take that one?
Sure, a lot of our experiential learning takes place in the classroom. And so our faculty play a great role in supporting the experiential learning opportunities for our students. We also have a career services center. We also have a center for civic engagement and community engagement as well. And so faculty and staff play the most critical roles in providing and supporting experiential learning opportunities for our students and the community as well.
Okay. President Docking?
Yeah, much closer connection to career services, like President Cornish was saying. Our career services work closely with our faculty to decide, is this going to be a credit-bearing internship, externship, or not? And then obviously evaluating whether that experience is worthy of college credit. Students want to get their hands dirty. They want to know what it's really like out there in the real world. In fact, we had a movement on our campus late last year to get a class that simply looked at practical skills. How do you buy your first house? What are equities, and how do you invest in them? How do you change a flat tire on the highway? You know, all of these things that students need to know as they're adulting when they get out of here. And so, yeah, experiential learning has really gotten much more to the center of much of what we do. And I think many of our professors are tending to certainly be somewhat theoretical, but also trying to bring in a very practical application, much like we talked about earlier with the connection with employers, that students can feel like they're really getting practical career-ready experience.
I think I might register for that class. It sounds like one that could really help me out. President Devereaux, how is this structured at Goucher?
So we actually have an associate vice president for career education and experiential learning, and oversees both the career services, the internship services that we typically see, but also the community-based learning, the volunteerism, the placement with local organizations. And so we look at this as kind of a local global strategy that we're working with global companies. We're trying to provide those opportunities because obviously our students have those global experiences and they tend to go towards that, but also looking at the local responsibility we have as being a good neighbor, town gown relationships here. We have a lot of students that are very much active in helping our local city, Baltimore, really kind of address the civic issues and what we need to do to make this place a better place to live and grow. And so a lot of involvement there. So it's all under that office. And then interestingly enough, the person who heads that office is a PhD in anthropology, comes from research in anthropology. So he has a good way of talking with our faculty because he's on a level playing field. They understand each other, and they trust him. And so that's a good bridge.
Great. Final question. This was actually one for you, President Docking, and the point you made about Google, but I think perhaps the other panelists might want to answer it in a slightly broader context. And this was in particular from Christopher Nitch. In relation to the Google discussion, are you examining integration of professional certificates into your curriculum because of your ties with industry?
Yeah, we do. Stackable credentials. I know sometimes people refer to these as yes, that has become very, very popular, and whether it's a certified financial planning certificate or even massage therapy, things like this that students can either do as a side hustle in the midst of their other more day job when they get out of here. That's very, very popular. We started several digital marketing, project management, multimedia marketing, even web development. You know, so many people my age don't know how to change the website or create a new website. And if a student can do this for, you know, people like myself or places like Adrian College, they can make really good money. And so we're offering all of these now to students so that they can sort of augment their major and their minor with these certifications that are very, very helpful to them.
Thank you. President Cornish, you practicing anything similar?
We are researching adding micro-credentials to our offerings as well. You know, we have a School of Health Sciences and Human Performance. And so we have a local hospital, a local hospice center, and people who need continuing education. And so how do we step into that space to provide those things to our community? Also, our strategic plan goal is to become a 12-month campus. And this also provides another opportunity for us to become a 12-month campus.
Excellent, thank you. And finally, President Devereaux.
Yeah, this is an area where, once again, because of the proximity to all these other colleges, this is an area where we've made a decision not to invest in this in the undergraduate level. At the graduate level, yes, we have, as we roll out new graduate programs, we're looking at stackable certificates and different things that we can do at that level. But at the undergraduate level, no, we aren't doing that, quite frankly, because it's a crowded marketplace. Lots of offerings in the greater Baltimore region. It's lots of opportunities there. And so we've tried to focus our efforts moving much more towards what President Cornish is saying. We are in the midst of a movement to becoming a 12-month campus. We've now introduced a number of things in our 3 J terms, January, June, and July, which really provides us with the opportunity for the highly motivated specialized student to graduate and get their BA in 3 years instead of 4 years. So we're looking at those opportunities and how to design that correctly.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Well, that takes us more or less exactly to time, so we'll have to wrap things up there. But I'd like to thank all 3 presidents for joining us, President Cornish, President Docking, and President Devereux. It's been really fascinating hearing not just your thoughts and the examples that you've given from your work, but also the diversity in terms of how each of your institutions is achieving many of the same goals, which just, backs up your point about the idea of each college's individuality becoming more and more important and the communities that you serve being reflected in that. For anyone watching, I'd like to thank everyone in the audience today, and just to reiterate that there will be an on-demand version of this webinar available on the Times Higher Education website, as well as a summary article that goes through all of its key takeaways. That will be sent to everybody who's registered today, so please feel free to go back and revisit this content and share it with any colleagues or who you think may find it useful. All that remains now is for me to wrap up and thank everyone again for their time. I hope that you've enjoyed the discussion as much as I have. It was a pleasure talking to all of you, and we hope to be able to engage with you at future Times Higher Education events. So thank you all very much, and goodbye.